Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. Thank you very much for joining me once again. You are always most welcome. So today, another show which was never originally planned and has been put into the schedule by viewer demand. So you ask questions and I aim to please. I do get asked a lot to do build videos, but I'm sorry, it takes so much editing, I just can't be bothered. You end up doing more editing than you do building, so I don't do that sort of stuff. But at the end of a long build, I'll always do this mosquito, that'll be a big montage. I'll probably end up with hundreds of photos. But anyway, still early days of that one. But what you were asking about, the other thing people asked about, how to display the models, and we've just done that one recently. And the other thing that people asked about was airbrushes, and one person said, can you strip your airbrush in one of the programs? And I thought, okay. A bit reluctant with this because it's not really my thing doing this kind of thing, and I don't want to come across as the great wise expert. There are other people out there who have been doing it longer, do it more, some do it semi-professionally. So I'm just showing you. It's not an instructional video really. I'm just going to show you the way I go about using mine really, and I'm not going to do any spraying live on air or anything like that. Just going to talk about airbrushes. And we had this conversation recently where I was talking about the Fengda airbrush, the Chinese one, which is very cheap, under £25. Not much more than 20 quid in some places, I think. I've got one of these. I don't really get on with it. I'm not knocking the products. I think for the money, there's nothing better value probably in the world. But I think it's a classic case of I don't care what anybody says. I think you get what you pay for in this life. And it's quite cheap and it's quite cheaply made, but it is, in fairness, it does have some merits, you know. If you've never been into airbrushing before, I think it's definitely worth considering. At the price, it's a no-brainer really. It's a no-brainer because it works and it will do a job for you, and it'll make you want to go on and buy better airbrushes in due course, but it will get you into the hobby in quite a reasonable and decent way. So I'm not knocking it. I think we're very lucky to have something that cheap in the market. So that's something I'm going to talk about. I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you my personal, I was going to say Rolls Royce. It's not really a Rolls Royce product as such, but very, very beautifully made. And it's the Iwata Corporation of Japan. And I have there, and it's the HP-CH I think I'm running at the moment. Yes, it is. HP-CH, which has actually come down since I bought this. Now it's interesting. What did I just say? You get what you pay for. So, I'll show you that first, I think. I'll show you that first. Now, somebody actually asked me, would I strip down the airbrush on camera? Because I made this, I was telling this story about I always strip my airbrush after every spraying per colour, which is unusual, I think. I think a lot of you dirty devils don't do that. Like, you know, Phil Flory and many, many more of you. Phil Flory's got another answer to that problem. He told me, I had a chat with him once at Telford, I think. About 5 years ago. And he said, I've just got 7 airbrushes. Well, I've only had one until very recently. And I've had this since 2009. This is the Iwata HP-CH. So I've got a few goodies in here. I've got some super lube. Oh, suits you, sir. You need your lube, sir. Very important to make sure your needle's lubed. And I've got the different nozzle caps, different style. The more open one that's like a splayed style, which I'll show you. Try not to lose this because some of these parts are tiny. Oh, and I've got a nib as well. I'm going to be very careful here. Spare nib. I've got 2 spare nibs. So I've got quite a few spares. Let me zoom you in because these are absolutely minute. Not sure the camera's going to be able to capture this. Oh, before I go any further though, so one or two of you noticed I've got, for a change, I haven't had a glass of red wine on screen anyway, for quite some time. And some of you often ask me what it is I'm drinking, and it's always different, you know. Today, and it's getting a bit low, I'm just going to have a quick slurp, excuse me. I'm actually drinking, I'll show it you. Of course, some people call me Lord Oxley for good reason. What have I got here? Fortnum & Mason's Claret 2022. I've actually got one of theirs for Christmas, and I think it's 2019, so it's 5-year-old. So that's going to be quite nice. It's not overly expensive. I think it's about £10 or £11 a bottle. Nothing stupid. There you go. Fortnum & Mason's finest, Claret. Well, it's not their finest, but it's one of them. It's probably their best-selling red wine, I believe. So yes, quite a nice one. So that's what I'm having tonight. And on that note, I think I might just top up my. I think I might just have a top up actually, because I probably deserve it. Why not? Look at that. There we go. Fantastic. Oops. Not sure I got enough then. Let's just try again. Let's go again. There we go. Excellent, excellent. Right, now then, another quick slurp of that and we'll get down to business. This takes me slightly out of my comfort zone. Not truly out of my comfort zone, but just talking about it. Because I say, I mentioned Phil Flory, he's one of someone whose advice you can rely on in this area, you know, and many other people. I don't profess to be a great leading expert on how to do the models. I just have my own way that works, and that's all you need to do. That's all everybody needs to do. But have a look at some of these spares I carry. So I've got here, and you're going to struggle with this one. This is one of the little nibs that the actual needle goes through. Can you see that? It's tiny. Try and hold it still. There you go. There's actually two of those, and I've got the nozzle cap here. So this is basically the muzzle, if you will. This is the splayed muzzle, which gives a slightly more open pattern. I think that's like a crown, isn't it? It's a bit like a king on a chessboard, king's crown. Now I'm currently running with a non-crown style. That's just like just more like a sort of a hoop style. I'll just put those away because I don't want to lose these. Definitely don't want to lose them. Okay, let's just pop that away. Then I've also got what is this, Mac valve? Is it Mac valve? They're different connectors actually. This is something else. This is from my. I've got the slight change of subject. I've got the Iwata. I just realised that's actually for the spares for the Iwata compressor. So I've got the Smart Jet IS 850, which is a really nice compressor. Probably not for the beginner because they're a bit pricey. I think it was about, I'm struggling to remember, I think it was about £250. It wasn't cheap, maybe more. So those spares are not relevant, they're for the Smart Jet. But anyway, here is my airbrush. Now this is 15 years old. It has been responsible for almost all of my models that you've seen, apart from those ones where we have the rattle cans, some of the racing cars and things. All the rest, all the military type stuff, aircraft and armour, figures, all sprayed with this, and it is a very, very beautiful thing. Now this is proper, how can I put it? I think the best way to explain it, and I'll zoom in and have a closer look at some of the parts in a second. This to me is like, you've all seen, probably most of you have seen Kill Bill, where Uma Thurman goes to the Japanese, the ultimate Japanese sword maker, Hattori Hanzo, and she said, I need a Hattori Hanzo steel, and he has this beautiful chromed steel sword, you know, he makes a samurai sword for her. I feel the same way about these really. I'm not saying they are the ultimate best in the world, everybody's got, it's like anything, everybody's got their favourites, but it is the precision of the build of these I love. It's a bit like I was talking to somebody about watches not too long ago, and we were talking about different brands, you know, and you probably know I wear Omega, but I look at the Seiko, the Grand Seiko, the Japanese watches. They're not quite as posh, but by God they're beautifully made, and they are superb quality materials, fantastic engineering, and this is like that. So I'm going to zoom in, you can have a closer look. So think of it as finest Japanese steel, it's chrome steel, and everything about it is just shouts precision to you. So let's have a closer look. I'll zoom you in, you can see the finish. Now bear in mind this is very, very well used. 15 years, it's done most of my models, so probably 100 models. And I'm going to get as close as I can so you can see the quality. The trigger here. It's got a quick release valve on it for going on and off the compressor hose. And it's also had a few, because of its age, it's had a few incidents. If you look closely at the cup here, you'll see it's slightly flattered at the front where I dropped it on the floor. Not very clever, Peter. Dropped it like this. Ka-ching! It fell zooming down to the floor. And it whacked. It just shows how what quality it is though. It whacked it, it didn't indent it slightly. But it hit at full force, you know. So consequently, because of that, I can't use, I've got the colour cup cap, and I can't use the cap because it's no longer round. If I'd been using the cap the first time, it would have probably been safer because it wouldn't have dented the same. Anyway, so it has been in the war slightly, but have a look at the quality of this. Just look closely at some of the finishing and the standard of the engineering of the steel. So we're looking down into the colour cup here, and there we go. Again, if I draw back the needle, zoom back slightly. There you go. So it's a quality product, and it's got a beautiful finish to it, and it's just excellence in engineering, no question about it. Obviously you've got your needle adjuster at the back to adjust the actual movement of the needle, and therefore that regulates the amount of paint that goes into the mix. This is the air valve here that regulates the amount of air that goes into the mix, and then it comes out here, of course, spray, spray, spray. Now, the person who was asking about this said, "Oh, can you can you strip live on TV?" And I said, "Oh, what do you mean? Oh, yeah, the airbrush. Oh, that's okay then." So, I always have a joke about this, and people say, "Well, what do you strip it that often for?" It's just not necessary. And I think, well, it is really, because I don't like the idea of screwing up my paint jobs. I don't want to be contaminating one paint with another, and you get, even before I came on air, to my surprise, this is in very good shape, but I did find it wasn't as clean at the front of the back. It's all sorted now. It's perfect. But there's a little bit of gunk had built up at the back and a bit of gunk had built up at the front, and it does very quickly. This is why I do it. Because what happens if you're not careful is these fine particles of old paint will just vomit out, splurt out through the needle sometimes, and it will contaminate, and it will leave a dust speck or an actual blob in some cases, and it will mess up your model, and it's just not worth it, you know. I go back to this thing about Ron Dennis at McLaren, and you know, do my Ron impression now. He says, "We have standards here that are there for a reason, and second best does not win world championships." That's what he used to say, and he's right, of course. And therefore, he's a bit of an idol of mine, of course, and McLaren are famous for being OCD and fastidious like he is. Sir Ron Dennis now, I should call him by his proper title. And I think that's quite a good example to follow, and I have that sort of monkey on my back, or like Jiminy Cricket, he's like my conscience, Ron Dennis on my shoulder the whole time. So that's why my airbrush looks like it's almost brand new, even though it's been absolutely hammered. But I do keep it, again, I maintain it well, as you can guess. I also had it with me, a spare needle. I've got spare needles, and I've got, obviously you've seen the spare nibs and things. But I always joke, and people say, "Why have you only got one?" Until recently. "Why have you only got one?" "I've got two, I've got three." And I always say, you know, what is it from Full Metal Jacket, the Vietnam movie, where he says, "This is my rifle, this is my gun, this is for fighting, this is for fun." Sound off, 1, 2, sound off, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's like that. To quote Obi-Wan Kenobi from Star Wars Attack of the Clones, this weapon is your life. You must protect it at all times. So there you go. Think of it like that. So, if I've just sprayed, I've just been spraying a model and I've finished, what I'll then do, colour cup will be full of gunk of, you know, red paint, let's say, and we're done, and I'll literally just get the thing, and I'll remove the front caps, and then of course we've got our very delicate needle is exposed. I'll remove the rear cap like so, and the locking nut
for the needle. That will come off like so. Probably zoom in and probably get more benefit if I'm a bit closer. Come on, in you go, camera, do your job. So you've now got the needle completely exposed there. I think you can probably see that. You can see the needle's exposed. And what I do is I always draw it out rearwards, and then any gunk that's at the back, doesn't end up at the business end of the airbrush. And I'll take it out like so, twisting as we go. Now this is all clean at the moment, so we're okay. Then what I'll do is I will, and I'll zoom you right in for this. I'll then remove the nib at the front. I'll remove that nib here, and there's a little tiny spanner that we have with Iwata. So I just whirl that around a couple of times and then I'll whip it out. There we go. Got removed. And then I'll get one of the little fine, either cocktail stick, I got one here, maybe a cocktail stick, or I'll use one of those very fine cotton wool buds just to clean this end out, and all round here clean it with a little bit of solvent on it. I'll clean in the colour cup with cotton bud. I'll spray out, use some solvent first, or airbrush cleaner to spray out the cup first to try and reduce it a bit. And then I'll go in there with some tissue and some cotton buds, and then the fine cotton buds at the end to make sure that's absolutely beautiful. Oh, it's beautifully polished now, it's nice and clean. And then make sure that this is all clean. Now I have got a cleaning, I haven't actually brought them in with me, I meant to do that. I've actually got these cleaning brushes which I use for my airbrush. I don't use them every time because they don't actually last that long, they soon gunk up actually. But these very fine, they're like pipe cleaners basically, and you can push them through, draw them through. A good idea to have those, so make sure you've got to get rid of all the crud that builds up inside the tube in which the needle runs. So that's what I do, and then when I'm putting it back, reassembling it, I'll zoom in for this, I'm about to reassemble my rifle. I should be able to do this blindfold, to be honest, but maybe not actually blindfold, but I can do it in low light, let's put it that way. So what I'll do, I'll get my needle, and really, strictly speaking, you should always get your needle and you should bring it in from the front, not the back. The blunt end in from the front, and carefully push it through front to rear. So it pops out there, pops out of the back, and then draw it back away from the nib, where the nib's going to go. Then we're going to put our nib in. Just bear with me, it's a bit tricky, is this? Got our nib there, put that in. Then we get our little spanner and we lock the nib in. Sorry, the focus isn't as good as it might be. There we go. Until we get good lock, as they say. There we go. That's it. Locked. Remove the spanner. Then we can push forward our needle. You see it there? Out, in, and forward. There we go. Then we can put our. There's actually two caps here. The ultimate end cap is the one that dictates the spray pattern. And I've got to be honest with you, they're actually locked together. They actually do need cleaning internally because they've got a bit of crud in it and it's locked, it's really tightly locked together. So normally I'd split those two and I put them in a little tiny Tamiya jar with solvent in it. So it's probably safer to actually just for safety's sake, to draw the needle back, pop that on the front, like so. Then you can push your needle all the way forward. Now you can push it, you can tell it's forward, you get your thumb on it at the back, and then we bring on our little lock nut, like so, locked, and we bring on the end cap, finally, and we do that up. And then the last thing you do is you just check, because sometimes you alter the throw here of the needle, you just check it's still right.
might need to tighten it or just loosen it slightly. And there you go, it's reassembled. So that's it. Now I do that every single time that I change colours. Or, you know, if I go from like matte to gloss or anything like that, I just want to clean it out completely. And that's just me. I'm not suggesting other people need to do that. Or want to. But there we go, that's the way I do it. So that's my kind of Rolls Royce. That's my workhorse really, my ultimate airbrush. It gives fantastic fine work. You've seen, many of you have seen, they've got a lot of very nice comments actually about two models in particular. One was the Tamiya Messerschmitt BF-109 G6, and the other one was the Messerschmitt ME-163B Comet, which have both got this like leopard style, I forget what you call it now, the Luftwaffe like leopard dots I call it. Very fine patterning in different colours, and that did all that stuff. That airbrush is responsible for all that work. So there you go. So that's mine. I will now pop that to one side. I've got here the instructions, but they're all Japanese, so I won't bother with that. Then we'll have a look at the other end of the spectrum, which is the Fengda. Fengda. Now, this has got. Try and bear in mind what you've just seen when I show you this. Try and keep those images in your mind. The beautiful finish. Flawless metal. Oops. Fly after me. Flawless metal, beautiful finishing. Because this is different, obviously. This is an absolute economy airbrush. And it's aimed, really, I suppose, at getting people into the hobby with an airbrush for the first time. But it does come with a lot of kit. You get a 0.2, and I should just talk about that. The 0.2 needle that's in this, which is it's 0.3 in that one. But the 0.2 needle, and this is where I have a bit of a beef with them in a way. But we have to be fair about it. You know, it's cheap. Okay, so don't expect too much. The needle is so, the tip of it on this 0.2 needle is so delicate. It's quite soft as well. It's very easy to bend. I actually had it slightly bent at the tip, and I managed to true it up almost, pretty much true as far as my eyes can see. But that's again something that it's a lot harder to do with the Iwata. You've got to really abuse it to get a sort of bent needle at the end. But this you don't need to abuse. It's very soft steel, it's cheap steel. That's the nature of the beast. But I'm going to zoom you in. You can see some of the things I'm talking about. So you do get, within the box, you get a dropper, you get another colour cup cap, and you get the lead for the air to your compressor. And you get your spare needle. In this case, it's a 0.3. So it's the 0.2 that's in it at the moment, and I've got the 0.3 as my spare, so it's different from the Iwata. Whether I would use this for super fine work, I don't think I would. But anyway, let me show you why. I won't strip it apart in the same way because it doesn't like it. It doesn't go together in the same way, and it's quite sort of agricultural and a bit cheap metal. But you'll see in a second. So first thing, look at the colour cup. So this is Fengda, and at first glance it looks, yeah, very nice, very nice. But if we look a bit closer, can you see the standard of the sort of finishing of the metal in this colour cup? It's very, very rough indeed down here. It's sort of ground down, not refined in the finishing, not polished. And then on the side here, oops. Same thing here really, if you look very, very closely. Can you see here, on the flat sections, here and here, oops, here and here, it's very, there's a lot of sort of marks in the metal. It's kind of very low grade finishing. I'm not sure if we're really getting this on the camera, to be honest. Might be hard to show. Oh, I think, yes, we've got it. I think we've got it. Can you see those marks? On both sides of where the nut is. It's not finished anything like to the same standard, which of course at the price it's not going to be. I mean, I think it was nearly £400 when I bought that Iwata. They're much cheaper now of course because other models have come out, but it was quite a lot of money. It was almost £400, and I think they're now about under 300 now. But this is a tenth of the price, less than a tenth. So yeah, okay, you know, you're going to get things like that. Also, even things like, you can see flaws under the chroming if you look very carefully in some areas. And again, it's a little tricky on the camera, I think. But you can see that there's fundamental And the needle itself, I don't know if that's really easy to see, but even the needle looks a bit, the finishing of it isn't the same, looks a bit cruder. So it's a cruder product, and it all feels a bit, the tolerances are not the same, it all feels a bit sort of loose, and you know, people say they run in quite well over time, and I've only used it a couple of times, but I'm going to probably restrict myself to, it just doesn't fill me with any confidence the way it all feels a bit crude and sort of like farm machinery really. The other Iwata airbrush, to me, it feels really like, I think the best way to say this, this is like agricultural machinery, and that's like that Iwata is like a surgical instrument, really. That's the way I feel anyway. But I'm not trying to put people off buying one because it's so cheap, you can't really go wrong. And you know, this is an affordable airbrush, truly affordable. And I don't want to be too negative about it. I'm just saying, some of the hype that surrounded these has amazed me really, because you know, it doesn't want to behave like the Iwata does for me. It doesn't want to be stripped apart. It hates it, and it's clearly not strong enough and not well engineered enough to take that constant assembly, disassembly, assembly. This is like water off a duck's back on the Iwata, but it's not on this. It can't handle it. The machinery, it's not well engineered enough, and it's not finely toleranced enough to allow that to happen. And things like the threads all look a bit like they're gonna, you know, suddenly strip at some point. It's just the nature of the beast. It's very cheaply done, you know. However, for the money, it's very good, and you get everything you need really. So I don't want to be too negative about it, but I just wanted to sort of show the difference. And you know, even when you start on doing it, the threads all feel a bit scratchy and crunchy and nasty, and it's just not the same level of engineering, you know. But it does a job. So I'm going to use this for primering. I've got the two different needles, so I can do that. Use it for primer and maybe clear coating at the end, and keep it as an overall coat, not the fine work, you know, because I just don't think it's really so suited to that that colour cover. It looks alright on the outside, it's on the inside it really looks crude, I've got to be honest. But anyway, as I say, it's been a very affordable, almost like a breakthrough product for a lot of people to be able to have an airbrush that couldn't really afford one before, and that is to be applauded really. So there you go. So that's where I'm at. In terms of the products I use, and again, I'm not trying to teach anybody to do it my way or use the products I use. Just let you know what I use. So I use Mr. Colour Leveling Thinner on the shiny sort of satin and gloss finishes. If it's more of a matte finish, I use the Mr. Colour, what's it called? The fast one. Mr. Colour Rapid Thinner. That's it. Rapid Thinner, which does give a nice, lovely sort of satiny matte sheen. This gives more of a glossy sheen to your paint when it's mixed with this. I use the AK acrylics when I'm using the AK paints, like the Flesh I talked about recently, which is another good one now. And the staple for me has always been, really, because I use a lot of Tamiya acrylics, really. Most of the time, most of my months are painted with that. And so I use the Tamiya X20A, because that is the bread and butter product as a thinner for me, you know, when I'm using all my usual Tamiya products. So that's where I'm at with this. In terms of, you know, mixing and things like, talked about the compressor. Airbrush pressures now, again, please don't take this as gospel, because it can be affected by lots of things. You know, it can be affected by the weather you've got, the air pressure, the air density, what the conditions in your house are like, or wherever your model room is, where you spray. But I tend to spray, in the summertime, I'll be spraying at about, if I'm doing gloss finishes, I tend to spray 10 to 12 psi, thereabouts. And if it's more of a satin matte finish, I'll be spraying around 20, 18 to 20-ish. If it's a clear gloss coat, again, about 10 to 12. But it does depend on the paint, and some paints are very, very thin, and you can go a little bit higher with your pressure. If it's more of a like an acrylic, like a Tamiya, perhaps to get a nice even finish, a smooth finish, you want to go a bit lower. But if you're talking about Tamiya lacquer paints, you can whack the pressure up a little bit more. It just depends how much sort of, in the case of those products especially, how much you want it to self-level. You want to put a good heavy coat down, go a bit lower, you know. But if you're just doing primering, for example, I'll run at about 15 psi. But you can't, as I say, there's so many variables involved. Please don't quote me on that and say it didn't work for me, because it's trial and error. It's trial and error. It depends on your airbrush as well, and your compressor, and your gauge. So you can't really rely on what the gauge says. I'm just telling you what it reads on for my personal results. And that's it really. I just wanted to tick the box. The person that said, "Can you show me stripping your airbrush?" And I can do it a lot quicker than that when I'm not worried about, you know, talking to the camera. I'll do it in a few seconds and strip it right down. And I'll go at it hammer and tongs. And the thing I use the most in it, which probably shouldn't, is the Painter Clean, which is a solvent, very nasty one. Deeply unpleasant, I think that product is, but it's extremely effective, and that's why I use it. Always use it in a very well ventilated area though. That's true of a lot of these products. Same goes for Mr. Colour, leveling thinner, etc. Because that absolutely stinks. As do lacquer paints. Don't be afraid to wear a respirator. It's absolutely invaluable to make sure that you are not breathing this stuff in. Even X28, you know. Like the old saying, you know, just because it doesn't smell much doesn't mean it's not doing you some damage, so be careful with this stuff. I mean, it's like a chemistry set, isn't it? When you've got it out in front of you like this. You look at it and you think, you know, there's a lot of stuff here. Much of it can do you harm, so be very careful with it when you're spraying. And if you can use an extractor unit, one of these extractor cupboards, fan cupboard, all the better. I haven't really got a setup that allows me to do that here, so another reason I don't want to do videos, I stand at the back door and blow out through the open patio door. But that's okay in the summer, autumn, but when you get into winter, not so good, because if it gets cold, it's not suitable. You can't have cold air getting into your atomization effects of your paints, you know. Always remember as well, if you're getting finishes that are too matte, you're probably too far away from your model with your airbrush. You're probably too far away, or you're running at too high a pressure. And if you're getting the opposite problem and it's too runny, you're probably at too low pressure, or you're too close. You need to come back a bit. That's it really. You know, I say I'm not the world expert on this. I'm completely self-taught, but I've had some good results, and my trusty Iwata never lets me down. I actually saw you can pick this up for about £270, £280. I saw it today, so that's really cheap. Certainly less than I paid, I can tell you. I think it's the nature of them that over time they tend to come down because all the models come out, you know. Anyway, there we go. Hope you thought it was interesting. Something I don't normally sort of go into, but as I say, others like to talk about this in much more depth than I want to. But it's an interesting subject. It's an interesting subject, and I think that, as I've said before, and many others have said too, don't be led by, you know, oh, such and such has just come out, look at this, and everybody gets on this social media bandwagon, and people copy each other like sheep, and then they're buying stuff they don't need to solve problems they never had in the first place. If you've got, like I've got my Iwata, that works for me really, really well. And that is unlikely to get dropped anytime in the future, even if I were to get another one, you know, as an upgrade or something. It's a real good workhorse, bread and butter, a fantastic product, supreme, engineered, top quality, totally reliable, never lets me down. As long as you just be careful not to drop it like I did. It doesn't help them really. And always put your colour cup on, because otherwise you do what I do and end up slopping it all over the place. Sadly I can't do that anymore because my colour cup won't fit because I did drop it. Anyway, there we go. Hope you thought it was interesting.
I'll be back very soon. We've got some new products from ICM coming along in the next week or two. Until then, thank you very much for watching. I thought it was useful and thought-provoking. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay well, stay safe. Thanks very much for watching and joining me, and I'll see you soon. In the meantime, thanks a lot, and bye for now.